What's the juiciest secret you have? Story 1. After my mom had been dating my dad for some time, his buddy, who was also dating her best friend, hit on my mom. The way my mom puts it, he hit on her with such arrogance that he had assumed she had been wanting to sleep with him all along. My mom says she denied his advances on more than one occasion. We know that this guy had cheated on mom's friends several times throughout their 2-year relationship. In fact, he left mom's friend for one of the other girls. Side chick and he are now married with 2 kids. Oddly enough, my mom never told her best friend about this man's advances. My mom was afraid her friend would not believe her, and my mom definitely did not tell my dad. But she trusted me with this story when I was pretty young, and with some unspoken understanding that I would also not tell my father. Luckily, my dad and this man grew apart before I was born. It was not until I was about 14 that I ever came face to face with this person. I had been dragged to a summer barbecue that he and his family were attending. After being introduced to him, I was slow to remember his place in my parents' history until he greeted my mom by kissing her on the lips. It was pretty discreet, and I do not think my mom thought I saw it. I never saw my own parents kiss that often, even though they have been married for over 30 years. So you can imagine how quickly my jaw hit the floor when I saw this stranger's face make contact with my mom's. I confronted my mom later with a big, "What was that?" But she said she had been completely caught off guard and thought it was quite rude. I would like to believe my mom when she says she never slept with this guy. Otherwise, why tell me the story at all? But it always hurts when I hear my dad reminisce about the old days and his adventures with his good pal, Douche McDoucherson. This is the kind of gossip my father and I live to tell each other. The fact that he is unaware of his own melodrama just makes me feel even more on edge. It takes all my strength not to drop a truth bomb on my dad, but it is probably for the better. I do not think he would care or be mad, but it would definitely affect his memories. Also, maybe Douche McDoucherson pursued other girls my dad dated. Dad does not need to be burdened with trying to decide what was really going on with his love life over 30 years ago. Story 2. Mine are not that surprising to anyone besides myself and the people involved, but here are a few. Ex-co-worker tells everyone she has 4 kids, when in reality she has 5. Her first she had at 16, and very shortly after that, she had a son. She is religious and against abortion, and not wanting to give this child up, her mom adopted and is raising her son, meaning that she is secretly the child's mother, while he is being raised to believe she is his sister. My friend from high school moved out of state shortly before I did. After this friend left, my mom, who was friends with our landlord, who was friends with this friend's parents, told me that the parents put something like $50,000 to $100,000 in a savings account for this friend. They will not let this friend know until they feel the time is right. I am so tempted to let my friend know. One of the 2 boys I was close friends with as a kid is adopted. He does not know this. However, he lives right next to his actual biological grandparents, and he knows those are his grandparents. His grandparents were our landlords at the time, so he and his adoptive family built a house on his biological grandparents' land, and they live there. His adoptive parents have to pretend these people are related to him, so he continues to think he is not adopted. Also, he used to have accidents as a kid and would dig in his clothes. I also have one with extraterrestrials, but people would think I am strange, even though I am not. Now that my son turns 3 today, I am afraid for him because of this. Also, I have 2 brothers who are technically stepbrothers, same dad, different moms, but we never consider each other that. Both are in their 40s. One of them is gay but has a wife and 2 kids. He hides this from his very religious mother, who would most likely disown him if he came out. People ask how I know, and besides the obvious signs, my other brother admitted that our brother's gay. There is also the fact that before I was born, he came out to my dad, and my dad told him he had not found the right woman yet. His first romantic experience was when he was about 14 in Chicago, in a bathtub with 2 other boys. He used to live in the Florida Keys and wishes he could go back. He is sad, dislikes his life, and drinks a lot. I wish I could help him escape that situation so he could be happy. I am hoping he comes out when his mom passes away or when his kids grow up. Now, the other brother, who we will call M, is suspected not to be my dad's biological child. Even my dad thought that M was not his biological son. However, my dad was a good man, saved my mom and her 3 children from their abusive father, and even if M is not his biological child, he never considered finding out. He loved M just like he loved the rest of us. M acts like us, but he does not look like us, whereas S looks exactly like our dad, and I resemble both parents. Even if he is not, we love him anyway. Another brother of mine, who we will call B, is a former hero addict, but he is doing a bit better now. Another story about him: I found out his fiancée was seeing his best friend before B did. My sister went to drop something off at their place when B was at work and saw his fiancé's clothes on the floor, with the best friend's car in the driveway, as well as his clothes on the floor. She left immediately and told all of us except B. I argued that we should tell him, but everyone else refused. My sister and I were close growing up, and even though this was years ago, I did not want to hurt her, but I told her that if he did not find out soon, I would tell him. He found out a few weeks later and was upset with our sister and mom for not telling him. He asked me if I knew, and I had to lie and say no. I still feel bad about that. Even though all 3 are still friends, B lives with his ex-fiancée and his best friend, who is now dating his ex-fiancée, and they have 2 kids together with a 3rd on the way. I do not know how he does it. I guess because he has nowhere else to go, because addiction can damage your life and make your family lose trust. My own semi-secret is that I have a history of addiction as well. Not hero, but prescription medications. I started taking benzodiazepines and anything else my mom left for me at 8 years old. My dad was dying of cancer, and my mom would leave me medication as everyone worked so I could stay calm and care for my dying father. I moved to stronger medications at 11 and 12. This continued until I had my son at 19 years old, and since then I have been taking Suboxone and have no desire to return to my past. One of my sisters had an accident during gym class in high school. Another sister was stopped at a checkpoint and arrested for having cannabis as a teen. While she did use it, it was not hers. Remember the family friend who is now dating my brother's ex-fiancée? It was his car and his cannabis. But he had too many driving under the influence charges and would likely have gone to prison, so she took the blame. Luckily, since she had never been in trouble before, the judge let her go, and it was cleared from her record. My uncle was arrested when he was younger for dealing substances. The officer told him he would be released if he gave up the supplier, but my uncle went to prison because the supplier was his father, my biological grandfather. My family is full of individuals with addiction issues, but we try to help each other. I dislike that uncle and one other, who are rude and rely on my sweet grandmother. They are in their 40s and 50s and live with her, use her money, use her, and do nothing for her. It is unpleasant, and it is why not many of us visit our grandmother, because we do not want to be around them, although we do at times, because she does not deserve to be alone because of her sons. Story 3. Let me start with a little backstory. In my first year of college, I lived in a dorm with a very good friend, whom I will call Brad. On the first day of April, I decided to play a harmless prank on him by dropping small candy pieces through the peephole in his door, which had been removed so there was a clear opening, and I left a note that said I hoped it would not tick him off. After that, Brad told me he would get me back the next year. Months later, on the last day before we all moved home for summer break, I accidentally left a spare backpack that I really liked in his room. I was busy packing and could not retrieve it, so I told him to keep it over the summer and give it back the next semester. When the new semester started, he returned the backpack, and I used it every day for my books and laptop. At the same time, Brad and some other friends kept reminding me that I should be prepared for his big April prank and that I would never expect what was coming. I could not imagine what they meant. Over time, even more people made strange comments about it, until one friend finally became upset that I did not know and admitted the truth. Brad had taken my backpack home over the summer and behaved in an extremely disrespectful way toward it, both inside and outside. When I looked closely, I noticed stains I had somehow overlooked, and realizing I had been carrying that backpack every day was deeply upsetting. What made it worse was that all my friends knew and watched me use it without saying anything. I had never felt so shocked and horrified in my entire life. Story 4. This will sound vague on purpose, but a major and beloved nonprofit organization in my city in the United States is led by someone publicly praised as a remarkable visionary. While he is highly respected by donors, he has a disturbing private history. He was repeatedly found accessing illegal content on his work laptop and advised to stop because federal authorities could be alerted due to the organization's internet network. Despite this, he remained in power because donors admire him and because his influence is considered invaluable. He is older now, yet the organization also runs a children's education program, and there were several past legal cases related to inappropriate behavior toward minors that ended in settlements or quietly disappeared. When searching online, I found only a single mention of it from a blogger who had spoken with people who casually acknowledged his reputation, which left the blogger astonished that no major news outlet ever covered it, even though the cases were once public. People in the industry know about his past but still collaborate with him because working with him can change careers. It troubles me that I know this, especially because my information comes from a former partner who worked in the organization's information technology department. But I do not know who would believe me, and I also fear the consequences of speaking openly about it. Story 5, I was with a girl for over 10 years, and we had a wonderful son together. We were generally a happy family until we separated when my son was 8. The breakup was very difficult, and my son was heartbroken that his mother no longer lived with us. We stayed in contact because he visited her, and after about a year, she began dating someone new. Eventually, she told me she was pregnant, and I was completely shocked. I had always imagined we might reconcile, so hearing this upset me deeply. About a month later, the man she was seeing became violent toward her, abandoning her while she was pregnant. She contacted me and I helped her because I knew she was in trouble. Even though I felt disappointed and hurt, there was still a baby involved, and I still cared about her as the mother of my child. I considered getting back together with her, but I worried what my parents would think. I knew my son wanted his mom back, and over time we grew close again. We eventually reconciled but kept it secret through her pregnancy and for a few months after the baby was born. My mother noticed the new baby through social media and began asking questions, and my girlfriend urged me to tell them the truth. I finally told my parents we were back together and that she had a baby. My mother loves babies and was very happy, while my father reacted more seriously, but they accepted it. The only thing I did not tell them was that the baby was not biologically mine. I am Hispanic, and the father of the baby had a similar skin tone, so the baby appeared naturally part of our family. My mother questioned why I had not told them sooner, and I explained that I feared disappointing them with the complicated situation. I never thought I could accept another man's child, and at first the anger overwhelmed me. But when the baby arrived, he resembled my own son so much that my feelings changed completely. My son adored having a little brother, and my frustration faded. I realized the baby was innocent and deserved love and stability. Over time, I bonded deeply with him, and now I love him just as much as my biological son. We are a family again, and as far as my parents know, the baby is mine. Story 6, my grandfather was drafted into the Russian militia when they swept through Estonia, and he ended up traveling with a troop as part of a unit that targeted armored vehicles. He was injured by shrapnel in his leg and later captured. When the war was coming to an end and his camp was liberated, he made his way to Berlin, which took about 1 month, arriving just in time to witness the presence of all the major Allied leaders and military groups gathered in one place. He said that Stalin had stationed large numbers of troops throughout Berlin and the surrounding region, far more than the rest of the Allied forces combined, and that Stalin appeared prepared to take advantage of the Allies being concentrated in one location. According to my grandfather, this plan shifted dramatically once the events in Hiroshima and Nagasaki occurred, demonstrating a new level of destructive capability in changing the course of the conflict entirely. I am not sure how much of this is historically accurate, but my grandfather was not someone who fabricated stories, and he witnessed disturbing actions and disregard for life during his time with the militia, including civilians being used to shield troop movements, with tragic outcomes for anyone in the way, regardless of age or circumstance. Story 7, I originally wrote this in response to someone asking how closeted men manage relationships with their wives, and it grew into a broader story. The former husband of the daughter of some family friends turned out to be a man struggling deeply with his identity, and from what I was told, he had difficulty in the marriage and relied on specific methods to remain physically present in moments of intimacy. They did have a child before the relationship eventually ended. I met him only once at their wedding, but I was later told that he works as an attorney for his family, who are strongly connected in ways that place heavy pressure on him. Because of this, it is believed he cannot openly share who he really is without risking severe consequences, including the possibility of being harmed due to the sensitive information he knows. I cannot say how much of this is true, but the atmosphere surrounding him always made the situation feel complicated. The strain of this led the daughter into serious issues with prescription medications as a way to cope with the emotional turmoil, though she eventually went to rehabilitation and is doing much better now. The family also faced significant financial stress due to large gambling debts, totaling around $500,000, which her father ultimately covered. I am somewhat relieved my own father did not live to see the unfolding chaos, as the man involved was my father's closest friend, and my father held very traditional views. All of this was shared with me by my mother, who, much to my surprise, had to repeat some uncomfortable details while explaining the situation. Story 8. I do not know if it counts as a secret when it involves oneself, but there was a time during university when I was involved with 2 different girls in 2 different countries and neither of them knew about the other. I met one of them online when my relationship with the girl I was dating in person began to deteriorate, and although I initially viewed the conversations as harmless, the emotional connection with the girl abroad grew quickly. We communicated only through online messages and video calls. Whenever I was physically with my girlfriend, I muted my devices and told the girl abroad that I was spending time with university friends, using those excuses to explain any delays in responding. When my girlfriend stepped away briefly, I would quickly send replies to the girl abroad. I was not able to end the relationship with my girlfriend at the time because she reacted in overwhelming ways. Once, long before I met the girl abroad, I attempted to break up with her, and she cried so loudly that her housemates rushed in, assuming something terrible was happening, which made the situation impossible to navigate. Another time, when I tried again to end the relationship, she threatened to harm herself and later showed me evidence of doing so, which terrified me and made me feel trapped. Meanwhile, I knew I could not continue leading on the girl abroad. We had no realistic way to meet, neither of us could afford to travel, and she had no idea that whenever I claimed to be out with friends, I was actually with my girlfriend. So I slowly distanced myself from her over the course of 1 month, becoming brief and delayed in my replies until we eventually argued and drifted apart. It felt awful, but it seemed like the only way not to cause deeper hurt. My relationship with my girlfriend ended about 2 months later when her behavior became even more controlling. I never told her about the girl abroad, and I never told my friends either. That girl remains a secret only I know, and even now, although she is happily settled in her own life, I still think about her and know that any future chance with her would be impossible because honesty would change everything between us. Story 9. This will get buried, I am sure, but I had to create an account just to get this off my chest. Up until recently, I was best friends with my best friend since age 9. We have been through everything together, and her family took me in for a while when I was dealing with an abusive father in middle school. Her mom was like another mother to me. For reasons unrelated to this confession, we no longer speak. It has been very hard on me, but I think it is for the best. Anyway, the secret is that the dad she believes to be her dad is actually not her biological father. He raised her, but she is not his biological child. Her mom and the man she later married separated long ago, and during that time her mom had a relationship with the man she was truly in love with, but whom her parents forbade her to be with because she came from old New England money and her parents were extremely controlling. During that time, her mom became pregnant by the man she loved but returned to the man who later raised her daughter, and he raised her as his own. They eventually divorced for good. No one ever told her the truth. She is almost 31 now. I know this because when I lived with her mom and stepdad in college, I was told this entire story during a night when too much alcohol was involved. Even her younger sister knows. I hate that they put this burden on me because I feel she deserves to know. What makes it worse is that the man who raised her passed away suddenly from cancer last winter, and she is grieving deeply over losing him without knowing he was not her biological father. It tears me up. I wish I could say something, but it is not my place, especially now that we do not even speak anymore. Story 10. My friend was running an escort service and started getting very close to one of the women who worked for him. After a while, they started dating. She stopped working in that industry, and they eventually got married. Yesterday, they had their first baby. No one knows this besides his brother and me, and no one ever will. Also, for fun, and because this will get buried, here is a story about these brothers. They are only 1 year apart, so they grew up close to each other and were best friends throughout childhood. They were always skateboarding, causing mischief, and constantly videotaping and photographing everything they did, including skateboarding and graffiti, doing the kind of silly stunts and pranks that were popular in the late 1990s. My friend, the one who ran the escort service, we will call him Piers. No, not Piers, let us call him Farquhar. One time, Farquhar sneaked into the bathroom while his brother John was in the shower. John was completely unaware of what was about to happen and did not notice anything was wrong until a string of small firecrackers went over the shower curtain. He then saw Farquhar's hand above the curtain holding a disposable camera and taking a picture. The firecrackers went off. Farquhar ran off. John was furious, and that should have been the end of the story. Farquhar almost immediately forgot about the photo, and after about 1 month, he took the roll of film to be developed. When he looked through the photos, he saw the picture from the bathroom. The photo did not show the firecrackers or anything related to the prank, but instead captured John in a private moment with a wild expression on his face. I never saw the photo, but Farquhar said it was one of the most unforgettable pictures he had ever taken. He was not sure what to do with it, and having a photo of his brother in such a moment was something he definitely did not want anyone to know about. He decided the safest place for the photo would be in an envelope taped to the bottom of his television set. This was in the late 1990s, so he was not hiding it under a flat screen or anything like that. You know the saying, out of sight, out of mind. He eventually forgot about it. Much later, he came home from school one day to find that his entire room had been cleaned. All the shelves were dusted and organized, and then he noticed the nightstand with the television. It had been cleaned as well. At that moment, he realized his hiding spot had been found. He flipped the television over in a panic, but someone had dusted underneath it, and the envelope was gone. Farquhar's family did not have a maid, and every few months his mom would clean both his and John's room to keep things nice. His mom never said anything, not once in over 16 years, not to either of them or even to their father, as their parents were divorced. We know this because Farquhar later asked their dad about it, and his dad just laughed and laughed when he heard the story. Story 11. 2 of my best friends from college have a baby they gave up for adoption, and no one knows except another friend and me. They managed to hide the pregnancy because she did not carry very large and wore oversized shirts, keeping everything concealed. Around the due date, they told their parents they were taking a short trip together over the holidays, and they secretly returned to our off-campus house that we had rented for the year, while everyone else was home for Christmas. Their timing was precise, and she went into labor. He drove her to the hospital, which was only 10 minutes away, and she delivered a healthy baby boy they knew they could not raise. She chose not to see him because she feared she would change her mind, while he saw the baby only once. They completed the adoption paperwork immediately since we were in our senior year, and both of them were over 21. A couple of days later, after she recovered with no complications, he took her home, and all of us returned for spring semester completely unaware. What makes it even more surprising is that 3 of us lived in that house, me and 2 other housemates, and none of us had any clue, even though we were all close friends. He told me 9 years later during a visit when we were having lunch. He looked at me and said he had something he needed to share, and that I could not tell anyone. One other friend knew because he had stopped by their place the night they were leaving for the hospital and accidentally discovered the situation. Neither of us ever told another person, and neither of their families ever found out. Story 12. I have been waiting for a thread where I could share this because I cannot tell anyone in my life, having been sworn to secrecy, and it is the most unbelievable secret I know. There is a girl in my hometown who has lived with a male best friend for a long time. She is significantly overweight, and he has the opposite reputation: long blonde hair, attractive, and the drummer in more than one successful band. I learned their secret only because during a moment of drunken vulnerability, she confided in a very small group of close friends about something that had been weighing heavily on her. She and her male roommate had been secretly involved for quite some time. She is deeply in love with him and wants their relationship to be public and real, but he is ashamed of how she looks. He even gave her a specific amount of weight he expected her to lose before he would date her openly. If she did not meet that requirement, he insisted that their involvement would remain hidden. As upsetting as that is, the story becomes even more serious. Their secret relationship continued for years, and she became pregnant. She was terrified to tell him and could not bring herself to terminate the pregnancy, so she decided to continue it in complete secrecy. Because of her size, she was able to conceal the pregnancy from everyone. She carried the baby to term, gave birth, and had an adoptive couple arranged, all without anyone knowing. As far as I know, only a tiny handful of people are aware of this, and I have never told anyone who was not present that night because I want to respect her privacy. Story 13, we had a doctor working with us for a charity who was incredibly kind and gentle. Children adored him, and he was remarkably patient. Once, a patient threw something unpleasant at him, and he dodged it and ended up slipping into a puddle on the floor. Yet he simply laughed and quietly cleaned up alongside the nurse. I had never seen another doctor act like that. He never became angry, not even when a patient behaved recklessly. But one day everything changed. A woman came in after being seriously injured by her husband. Another doctor had attempted to close the wound earlier, but her family had not brought her in for proper care until she was close to dying. They lied to us about what had happened, and he looked at the wound and said only 2 words in a quiet but chilling voice. "Do not lie." It was terrifying to hear because he did not raise his voice, but the tone carried the kind of authority that makes you freeze. One of the family members became aggressive and swung a knife at him. I did not even see him move, but he calmly took the knife out of the person's hand mid-swing without trying to shield himself. He then scrubbed in and repaired a small injury to the woman's intestine, called the police, and testified despite the family's threats. He offered the woman a job after she recovered so she could stay independent. She divorced her husband and returned to her own family, and he never once raised his voice. I have seen him change clothes privately before going home, and he is covered in scars with a Latin tattoo that reads something similar to "in arduis fitis." He speaks Arabic and sits with Muslim patients helping them read the Quran. We always have a huge workload, but he relaxes by talking with patients. He is not a highly academic doctor, but he is genuinely kind. People think he is harmless and soft-spoken, and they tease him because he flinches at loud noises like fireworks or balloons popping. They do not realize he may allow this treatment because he dislikes conflict, and yet he is the same man who does not blink when someone swings a knife at him. Story 14. One of my close friends is disliked by everyone else in the group, and she has no idea. They constantly talk about her behind her back and insist she is dishonest. They claim she lied about having cancer, even though she has a small surgical scar, and there are pictures of her in the hospital. They think she lied about her job because she works as a professor, and they could not find her name on the school registry, even though they searched the wrong institution. One of the girls recently got married, and this so-called liar was even included in the wedding party, which makes no sense if they truly believed she was deceptive. A week before the wedding, her appendix ruptured, and she was rushed to the hospital, making her unable to attend. They all insist she made up the emergency and say she simply did not want to go because she had forgotten to buy her dress. For her birthday, her parents gifted her a hotel stay in New York City and bought football tickets for all of us, spending hundreds of dollars despite not being wealthy. I could not attend for health reasons, but I texted her afterward to see how the game was, and she told me no one came. I feel terrible for her. She is a genuinely kind person and does not understand why everyone has been so cold toward her since she missed the wedding. I am torn about whether I should tell her the truth or stay silent. For 6 years, they have been calling her a liar. It is awful. I am the only one in our group who actually believes her and does not think she is fabricating things. She has been friends with some of these girls for 15 years. We are all in our late 20s or early 30s, and this behavior feels like petty high school drama. Story 15. The Klan seems to be increasing in visibility in my state, or perhaps they have always had secluded towns that people simply do not talk about. I was driving with no destination in mind and accidentally ended up lost in a small town. There were many people outside, all of them white, which was not unusual for the area, but the atmosphere felt off. Because I was lost, I drove through several times and gradually noticed the signs. Everything felt strangely coordinated. The only chain businesses I saw were a bank and a fast food restaurant that was closed, and its marquee had been altered with intentional spelling that made my stomach drop. Other businesses had names filled with repeated letters in ways that made the theme disturbingly clear. I began to panic slightly. I had not planned the trip well and was running low on gas, so I had to stop. The interaction I had while getting gas confirmed my fears in a way that felt straight out of a suspense novel. Worse, when I tried to leave town, I discovered the bridge I had crossed earlier was now blocked, and I could not find another route out. It became dark, and although I desperately wanted to get home, I was too afraid to get out of my car again to ask anyone for help. They were having a scheduled rally that night, which I realized when I saw a banner across the road announcing it. Cars began following me, all of them white vehicles or pickup trucks, and I genuinely started wondering if I was dreaming or imagining things. It was all real. Eventually, out of pure desperation, I took a road that looked unwelcoming, unlit, full of construction equipment, but it finally led me out. There is much more I could describe, but Story 16. Back in middle school, there was a lonely kid who was picked on a lot because of his appearance. The truth was, he came from a very wealthy family. His parents owned a large car dealership and a chain of gas stations. I started talking to him about random things, probably something related to video games, since a new console had just been released at the time, and we discovered common interests. He had a game I really wanted to try, so I went to his house that weekend. When we were away from school, his true personality came out, and something felt a bit unsettling. We played games and joked around until we went to his room, where his computer was. He began showing me things online, and then everything took a disturbing turn. He opened a file on his desktop containing extremely inappropriate material, things no child should ever be exposed to, involving both adults and minors, along with content involving animals. My young mind could not process what I was seeing. I felt sick, confused, and frightened. He noticed my reaction and tried to play it off as a joke, but deep down, I knew something was very wrong. We left the room and went back to the game area until my mother came to pick me up. I barely spoke to him after that. Through middle school and high school, he continued struggling socially. His parents moved out of state at the end of our sophomore year, and I have no idea where he is or what he is doing now. I genuinely hope that he received the help and intervention he clearly needed. Story 17. My friend's wife bought him a PlayStation 4 and a new game for Christmas after always saying she would never support his gaming. And the first time I see him after the holidays, I plan to jokingly say, "You are welcome." But here is the real story. The summer after I graduated high school, my group of friends and I went camping at a campground where one of them had a family trailer. We usually did this every year, but this time was different because the girls joined us for the first time. And since we were all 18, there were no parents around. Nearby, there was a creek that people loved to float down on tubes, and we did it almost every day. Later in the week, I think Thursday, the girls decided not to join us. The guys and I went tubing as usual, and everything was normal until a storm started forming on the horizon, making the water move faster. We kept an eye on it, but were not too concerned. Shortly after, a very serious-looking man appeared along the bank near the road and asked if we had seen his daughter and her friend. He described them. We said no, and told him we would watch for them, and he continued upstream. Within minutes, we heard noise on the opposite bank coming from the brushed laughter, movement, and something that sounded like distressed, muffled yelling. Curiosity got the best of me, and I convinced the others to check it out. We landed and quietly approached the sounds. We found the two missing girls in a dangerous situation involving older men who were clearly intoxicated, while another person was recording. We intervened immediately, pulled the men away, and they fled when they realized they were outnumbered. One of my friends managed to grab the camera before they escaped. We escorted the shaken girls back to their father at the campground. handed him the device without saying a word, and left. Later, we heard that 2 of the men involved were found miles away in the woods, severely beaten and no longer alive. Everyone who had been there knew exactly who was responsible, and the girls never learned the full story. Story 18. 3 years ago, some guys from the neighborhood, known for dealing substances and for being involved in dangerous behavior, kept telling people they planned to attack a friend of mine if he showed up at a party for no reason. Everyone was genuinely afraid of them because they had harmed people before. I went to my friend and asked if he was still going to the party. He said yes and asked why, so I told him the threats. He simply replied, "I do not really care. John will be there," and walked away. Everyone at our school knew John. He was very tall, around 2 meters, incredibly friendly, and never violent. I was confused. At the party, my friend arrived, and the threatening group approached him. No one intervened because we were all scared. Just as they were about to act, John stepped between them, leaned in, whispered something into their ears, and suddenly their faces drained of color. They looked terrified, like something out of a horror film. He signaled for them to follow him outside while he made a phone call. I caught a glimpse of John's face. He looked so serious and intimidating that even I felt fear. Only a few of his close friends followed them outside, but I went too because I was curious. What I saw stunned me. The same group of guys who used to threaten everyone were standing there silently with their heads down. 2 large SUVs pulled up, the men were guided into the vehicles, and the cars drove away. 2 days later, I heard they had been found in the hospital with severe injuries. Apparently, John was the son of a very powerful criminal figure, likely organized crime, and he considered the friend they had threatened as family. Many people now know that John can be frightening when someone he cares about is in danger, but no one talks about it openly because everyone still genuinely likes him. Story 19. I used to work in a deli at a chain of family-owned markets that had a reputation for being down-to-earth and family-oriented. But the truth was that the owners were extremely greedy and did not treat their employees well. There was one customer who used to come in 5 minutes before closing every night to get a sandwich. Normally, this would frustrate me because I liked having everything cleaned and wrapped by then, but he was genuinely nice. We always talked casually while I made his Italian combo, and he once told me he was a police officer who grabbed food during the short break between shifts. I never minded helping him. One evening, he came in at the usual time and asked me to walk with him down one of the aisles. The store was empty except for me, a couple of cashiers, and the closing manager. We walked into the canned goods aisle, and he told me he needed to get something off his chest. By then, we were friendly enough because I had always been good to him about arriving late, and he also knew all of us disliked the owners for their cheapness and disrespect. He said that a couple of nights earlier, he responded to a call about a group of teenagers in a car under a bridge. When he approached the vehicle, he realized it was one of the owners married, known publicly as a devoted family man, together with a young cashier from another store. He handled the situation professionally, but the owner tried to bribe him to keep quiet. He did not even offer money. He offered steaks, lobsters, and whatever you want from his stores. The officer refused. He told me this because he knew the family's reputation was all image and that they treated their employees poorly. He asked me whether he should tell the owner's wife or not. The complication was that the cashier's fiancé was known to be aggressive and prone to violence. The officer even considered showing up at the owner's home and telling the wife himself, but he could not decide. He shared all this with me because he knew how much I resented the owners. After that, he simply said goodbye and walked out without ordering anything. He never returned. I kept that information and considered using it to pressure the owners into giving the deli crew the raises we desperately needed, but I never did. Months later, I left the job. But before leaving, I passed the information to another deli worker who had been there for years, was a great employee, and had never received a meaningful raise. I remembered how wide-eyed he looked when I told him, and then I walked away. Part of me hoped he would finally do what I never had the courage to do, hold that owner accountable and get the money he deserved. I never found out if he used the information. Story 20. On my mother's side, my family loves to keep secrets, and I have always hated that, but now I finally have one of my own that I do not know how to handle. This needs a little background. My great-grandfather, on my father's side, had a mistress long ago and an entire second family with her, more children with the mistress than with my great-grandmother. This is fairly well known among us. Years ago, my now-deceased aunt was at a horse show and met a man with our last name. Our name is uncommon enough that most people who share it are related because it is the anglicized version of an already rare French-Italian name, and anyone with it is usually either French-Italian or English. My aunt joked that he might come from the illegitimate branch of our family. When he visited his mother later that day and told her the story, she confirmed that what my aunt said was true. All the children from that second family knew the situation, but had promised to keep it secret from their own children, to preserve their grandfather's memory. So this man was the only one among his siblings and cousins who knew their family's hidden history. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine shared a large public post on social media, and for some reason I checked the comments. I found a woman with our last name and viewed her profile to see if she might be related. She did not look like us, so I was about to move on, but then I noticed posts she had made for someone she seemed close to. That person had a different last name, but soon I figured out she was her daughter. After looking through a few public photos, I noticed features on the daughter that are extremely specific to our family. I realized the first woman was married to someone with our last name, and her daughter had changed her name through marriage. I have not looked up the daughter's husband yet, but I really want to. If he looks enough like the rest of us, I am considering reaching out to them to see if we are related. I have not told anyone in my family because I have not confirmed anything, but part of me hopes I might have found a branch of long-lost family members. Story 21. My friend's mother pressured a gay man into being intimate with her because she desperately wanted a baby. When my friend was born, her mother told everyone impressive stories about the father, like saying he was wealthy, that he was a doctor, and that he loved them unconditionally, but in reality, he had simply been a drunk man who, in my opinion, had been coerced into something he never intended to do so she could have a child. Not long after my friend was born, the mother claimed she had cancer and was being treated, but it was eventually discovered that she had never had cancer at all. She had a long pattern of lying about many things, including claims of being assaulted, having extraordinary jobs, buying new houses, and various other stories that people doubted or had evidence to disbelieve, and she often pretended to be ill, both for herself and for her daughter. When my friend was a little over 1 year old, the mother's lies began falling apart, and she moved to an island off the country. She continued moving from place to place, likely because she would build an elaborate web of lies and then leave before anyone confronted her. I only know all of this because I met my friend in my late teens, when we both started university in a city near the town where I had grown up, and we realized that we had lived in that town at the same time as children. I mentioned this coincidence to my mother, and after a few more details, she realized exactly who the girl was, and more importantly, who her mother was. My mother told me everything in confidence because my friend does not know who her father is, and she certainly does not know that her mother coerced someone into becoming pregnant with her. I am no longer close to her because she constantly talks about illnesses, boasts about unrealistic things, and tries too hard to get people to admire her in ways that do not feel genuine. It seems clear that she inherited a lot of her mother's behavior, and I dislike dishonesty, so I cannot deal with that anymore. Story 22. A friend of mine grew up with extremely strict parents who controlled every part of his life, even planning his wedding for him, and eventually he became so overwhelmed that he could not take it anymore. He met a girl he was deeply attracted to, and she convinced him to run away with her, so he disappeared, and the police searched for him, but he never returned home. I was worried, but knowing how unhappy he had been, I also knew he was probably better off. After some time, he contacted me to say that he and the girl had run away together, and that he was teaching himself to be an artist. When the police finally located him, they treated it as an adult choosing a new life and respected his request that his parents be kept out of his personal affairs. Now he and the girl are married with a couple of children. They are happy together, and his parents still have no idea where he is. This past year, I went to a training seminar out of state with a coworker and a few others, and we shared a room. Like a couple of idiots, we got extremely drunk and started telling stories to make each other laugh, and he suddenly told me that his wife is also his sister. He even showed me childhood pictures of them together. He said they fell in love and chose to live together as a married couple, and their mother, for reasons I cannot understand, supports them. The next day, after we recovered from our hangovers, he realized what he had confessed and begged me not to tell anyone. I was shocked for a while but kept quiet. Eventually, I decided that it is his life, and if that is the path they have chosen, I am not going to create trouble for them. I do not know the full story of how they ended up in that situation, and honestly, I am content to let it remain a mystery. Story 23, I am related to someone who ran for governorship of a province in the Philippines around the early 2000s and lost. The election was extremely shady, so much so that she ended up fleeing to Las Vegas and hiding out with a depressed friend for a couple of years. Apparently, it had been the scariest election in the entire history of her political dynasty, with armed men roaming around, intimidation everywhere, and even a bombing. There were dangerous people working for both sides, although she tried to keep her own supporters under control and make things as peaceful as possible. At one point during the campaign, she was visiting a village where a 12-year-old girl was being kept in a cage and exploited, and she tried to intervene, confronting the girl's father and getting furious. But he was voting for the other side and ignored her. He reluctantly agreed to act, but when she came back, nothing had been done. She explained to me how whole villages are bought off with envelopes of cash, and that this is how elections are won. She once said it would be interesting to secretly record the corruption during a future election and expose it publicly. But she also believes things have become so dangerous that only the most ruthless, psychopathic candidate can win, and she knows she cannot run that kind of campaign, so she knows she cannot win anymore. We visited the governor's palace, and outside it there was an enormous stretch of lampposts that stayed lit at all hours, blasting pop music nonstop, even at around 2 a.m. It was extremely extravagant. The governor's brother runs the local electric company, and the governor himself has rumored connections to illegal substance operations. She called him an autocratic freak. There are even darker details, but some are tied to real news articles, so I will avoid being too specific. The new political group in power planted evidence to make the old group, the family I am related to, look extremely corrupt. She also told me about a friend of hers whose father, a governor in a different province, was such a violent man that he reportedly had bodies and severed heads in his yard and once burned down an entire village. Law enforcement never touched him because he paid everyone off. Eventually, someone had to assassinate him. Stories like that are everywhere. None of this is surprising for the Philippines, but as an American, it felt surreal hearing all of it. Online information about that election and the governor is eerily sanitized and full of praise, while the reality is far darker. I just hope politics in the United States never reaches that level, because corruption becomes a monstrous, unstoppable force, and once it reaches a certain point, cleaning it up becomes nearly impossible. Story 24. The first story is about a girl I went to high school with. We were not everyday friends, but we played basketball for the same program since the boys and girls teams trained together. She was a very good student, always studying hard and getting top grades. Then she got into a bad relationship with a careless stoner type, some kind of teenage rebellion, and he got her into smoking weed. Her grades collapsed, and she dropped out in year 12. A year or two after high school ended, I was walking through the rough part of town early one morning, around 5 a.m., and I ran into her. It turned out she was working as a prostitute, still dating the same deadbeat guy, and she went out every night to earn money for Hero. It was incredibly sad because she had once been such a nice person. I never told anyone that I had seen her. The second person was a good Catholic girl who always talked about waiting for marriage before ever being intimate with someone. It turned out she had participated several times in situations involving her biological cousin and the cousin's boyfriend. I remember thinking the boyfriend was probably the luckiest guy alive because she was extremely attractive. Then there were some others whose stories are not really interesting unless you know them personally. Things like one guy being involved with a girl, another guy secretly doing things online because he was obsessed with someone, One friend who slept with married women who were larger. Another friend who kept trying to get with his best friend's girlfriend the whole time they were dating. Just all kinds of silly and stupid drama like that. Story 25. One of my college friends, Bryson, got his girlfriend, Carrie, pregnant when we were in our early 20s. They dated for a while and eventually broke up. And I still do not know whether he knew about the pregnancy or whether the breakup was related to it. Even within our friend group, she was such a difficult person that no one questioned why they split. However many months later it was, I received a phone call from another friend saying, Carrie just had a kid, and I thought he was joking until he insisted it was true. Carrie was one of those women who was so overweight that she went full term without anyone realizing she was pregnant. So suddenly she was a mother, and we were all shocked. Not only because of that, but because the baby was black. Bryson was also black, and we did not really know any other black people besides him, although Carrie claimed she had been with a black man during a road trip to New York with one of our friends. But that friend was a huge gossip, and we would have heard about it. I never saw the baby myself because Carrie and I were not close, but I was told the child looked just like Bryson. Bryson wanted nothing to do with the situation and did not even want a paternity test, and Carrie did not want one either, which was strange because she was broke while Bryson's parents were millionaires. If the baby was his, the child would have been taken care of. Instead, the kid grew up without a father. A few years later, my friends and I ran into Carrie at a local festival, and the kid was there. One look at him, and I knew he was Bryson's spitting image, and I felt awful knowing this child was growing up without a father because both parents were stubborn. I wanted nothing more than to kneel down and tell the boy I knew his father. Shortly after that, I talked to Jake about the whole situation, and he told me something even worse. The webbing under the kid's tongue was so long that it was affecting his teeth and delaying his speech, and he needed a simple surgery to fix it. Carrie refused to get it done. She was living on welfare, and instead of saving money for his medical needs, she spent what she had on buying her current boyfriend a new gaming console. Her sister, who was working as a waitress, eventually paid for the surgery herself so the boy would not suffer developmental delays. Story 26. My sister cheated on her now ex-husband, and I am not supposed to know that. When I asked why they divorced, I was once told, I am too sad to talk about it right now. And another time, I will tell you later, which was at least a year ago. That affair led to her becoming pregnant, and her husband did not know the child was not his. He found out shortly after the first child's communion, and I am not supposed to know that either. But she became pregnant again around the same time, and this time it was his baby. He did not believe her and wanted a paternity test, and the second child actually resembles him. I found out all of this because my father accidentally told me. He played the middleman between both men and my sister, trying to prevent everyone from tearing each other apart. I cannot verify every detail since my father is a narcissist, but the other man is definitely my niece's biological father, based on his social media. There are posts from him praising my sister, as well as posts from my uncle and cousin speaking highly of him. I even emailed my sister once, pretending I did not know anything and asking who he was, but she never replied. The evidence is all over social media, including pictures of him with my niece, and him clearly calling her his daughter, which is not something someone casually dating a woman would say. The strange thing is that this is only a secret to me. Her ex-husband contacted many people she knew, revealing everything she had done and criticizing her, and some people abandoned her while others stayed by her side. He was about to tell me himself when my sister intercepted and told me not to answer the phone because he was going to criticize me for borrowing money from her. She promised him she would tell me herself and begged him to stop contacting me, and he agreed. But of course, she never told me. I have no idea what he thinks of me since he removed me from his social media, even though he still has my sister, my girlfriend, and my dad added. My sister does not know I know, knows that I know, and is afraid to bring it up, or simply does not care. All three seem equally possible now. I eventually stopped caring because I was constantly frustrated and stuck, unable to understand what to think, and she admits she does not feel comfortable opening up to people. She is very generous with gifts and financial help, but she seems incapable of emotional closeness or terrified of it. I once told her she seemed distant or like she was hiding from me, and she said she did not disagree, which was a strange answer, and I did not push it because she helps me financially, and I did not want to strain things. Even aside from that, we are extremely different people. She is straight-laced, traditionally successful, and not curious about much, while I am the wayward younger sibling trying to figure things out. It may be selfish, but I was more upset that she never told me than I was about the cheating itself. It felt like she did not know me at all, because I would not have judged her. I also had no real connection with her husband, who would barely shake my hand and refused hugs. I finally got one hug after they divorced, which felt awkward, so it was always hard to feel close to any part of that situation. Story 27. My grandfather once ended up killing his friend. He was Mexican and had come from rural Mexico to work legally in the United States during the 1960s and 1970s, mostly in agriculture like many who came from his region, and he formed close friendships. He spent more than half the year away from his family before returning home. After finishing one work season, he returned to Mexico with a friend he had known for years. They were traveling together and had just crossed back into Mexico, walking along a dirt path alone. Suddenly, his friend pulled out a knife and attempted to attack him. My grandfather managed to dodge the blade, but they struggled, rolled on the ground, and he fought for his life, eventually managing to stab his friend instead. The man had tried to kill him to steal the money he was bringing home to support his family. My grandfather left the body in a place only he knew about and returned home without telling my grandmother. For years, he had nightmares and visions of the man he had killed and felt guilty for not giving him a proper burial. Eventually, he returned to the border area, found the body, and buried him respectfully. He said the nightmares stopped after that. He never regretted defending himself and never told anyone except my mother and me. My grandmother has no idea, and she never will since my grandfather passed away a few years ago. Story 28. There is a very small, almost negligible chance that my previous girlfriend, whom I dated for about 4 months before she cheated with an ex and became pregnant, could have had my daughter instead of the man she was seeing behind my back. I am almost certain this is not the case based on the timeline, but the gap between the last time we were intimate and the birth of her child lines up just close enough that it is not impossible to imagine some badly timed incident combined with an unusually long pregnancy, even though the far more likely and preferable explanation is that she got pregnant by him later and had a normal pregnancy. Still, the thought sometimes lingers. She was the person I lost my virginity to, and although the relationship was short and full of chaotic moments, both of us handled the pregnancy conversation calmly, since deep down I think I knew she was unpredictable, and from her side she had already become pregnant by someone else. At this point in my life, I look back at the whole situation as a strange story from my past about getting involved with someone unstable and somehow making it out without long-term disaster. And the possibility, however tiny, remains in the back of my mind. Story 29. My friend and I were slightly under the influence while talking about intimate topics like past experiences, and I asked her how many partners she had been with before her current boyfriend of 3 years. She said she had been with only 5 people, which surprised me because she was always open when talking about relationships and personal stories with classmates, family, and even professors. I thought, okay, interesting, and moved on. About 3 weeks later, I was having dinner with her and another friend from my organic chemistry class, also slightly inebriated, and we started talking about intimacy again. My friend from class said that for casual encounters, she preferred certain things over others because she disliked risks, and she doubted anyone truly enjoyed those activities. I jokingly said, well, our friend here definitely thinks differently. The other girl asked how many partners she had been with, and she answered 7, and I was shocked because she had told me 5 earlier. I asked where the other 2 came from, and it turned out that she had been with 2 men she met at a fraternity party a couple of weeks before our dinner. The 2 men did not know each other, but she found both attractive, and the compliments they gave her made her feel confident. She said she had never been with someone outside her usual type and decided to try something new. Quietly, I questioned her logic, thinking that trying something new might be fine in general, but not when she was in a committed relationship of 3 years. I kept my thoughts to myself, but I could not help wondering how this would affect her relationship and whether she understood the consequences of her choices.